Okay, so, what you've been waiting for. And if you didn't know you were waiting for it, it's here. So, what is here is Dale and Loretta Hoffman, and whenever Dale comes to share his wisdom, which is very deep, he is a biblical scholar, that I don't know if he would say that, he might. He's, well, we say that, you know, you speak fluent Aramaic and all of that, so you're pretty smart. Okay? Pretty smart. But
I don't have any money on me if I owe you.
that's okay. Just to let you know, though, he shares such depth with us, and he's one of the highest vibrational beings, along with his beautiful wife, Loretta, that I have the pleasure of knowing. And he always has something deeper and more expansive to share with us. So today, he has that. So I don't know if you got a shot of that, Denny, or not, but that's pretty impressive. I thought it was going to be this big, you know? So this is going to be an incredible experience, I think. It's all about vibration. It's all about frequency. It's all about energy. So Dale Allen Hoffman, would you please come forward?
She was supposed to say North Carolina. This is where I came from.
One time. It's an inside joke.
It's not so inside, but at least not anymore. We're going to tone a sound together as an opening. That sound sounds like this. Nu-ra, nu-ra. Can you say that? Nu-ra, nu-ra. Or just once. Nu-ra is good. So I'm going to tone it once. Just listen to this first one. Receive the vibration and the words of the Lakota. Let the wind blow through you. Be open. Allow this frequency pattern to move through you, and then we're going to do it together 3 times, okay? So just listen. This is an example of what toning is. You don't have to turn blue in the face and fall over. It doesn't have to last forever. It's not a performance. It's not about the quality of your voice. It's about the quality and authenticity of your opening, of your allowing, of your expression, okay? Much different. So allow this sound through. Just allow it to flow. Let's bring some beautiful air in through your nose. Again. One more wide open, really let it ring out. We're going to take 3 deep cleansing breaths. You can breathe in through the nose. Hold that in the body temple for just a few moments. And then out through the mouth. Do that a second time. One more. Breathe in the Haya, conscious life energy. And exhale, absolute release and openness. So how are you feeling right now? You can open your eyes if they're not open. I haven't been here in 18 months. The last time I was supposed to be here was in December, and we got stuck in snow on the mountain. But then about 2 weeks after that, I was driving down the mountain on New Year's Eve to pick up our son, wasn't it? And I kind of scooted a little bit over the edge. There was a shrub about that big that stopped my car from rolling over. We live up on a mountain in Asheville, North Carolina. The neighbor shows up, and I'm kind of just leaning back because the car is wobbling. He shows up with his dogs. He's like, she wouldn't come. What you doing? I'm like, try not to do much of anything right now. He's like, why don't you get out? And I'm like, I don't know if I can get out, actually. So he sparks up a cigarette and sits on the bumper. He's like, all right, you can get out now. I'm like, okay, thank you. Kind of jumping it out of the car. And it just kind of kept wobbling. It didn't go down. Funny, too, because when AAA showed up for that, the guy, the tow truck driver, he's like, well, are all four wheels down on the ground? I'm like, no, one's in the air. He's like, oh, then I can't move it. It's like all four have to be on the ground. So I literally lay down on the road because the back tire was just barely on the road, and I had a piece of paper. It was actually a card, and I was like trying to slip it under the tire. I'm like, no, it's on the road. He's like, okay, I can move it. I'm like, all right, good. So we'll meet this in a few minutes. I've been talking about this for a few years coming here, but a lot of you probably don't remember. This is the hardest thing to explain. I remember, like, messaging Margaret about coming back, and she's like, just write something up and send it to me. No, it's, how do you explain this? Well, this top part here is a much smaller dimensional replica of the Great Pyramid at Giza, exact same dimensions. Down in this base here, we have one that's on its way. It's being hand-built. It takes about 4 to 5 months for these things to be built. One of our best friends invented this. His name's August Worley. He's a legend in the music business with people who, he worked one-on-one with a guy named Bob Moog. Bob Moog is basically the Nikola Tesla of the synthesizer world. The Beach Boys, Led Zeppelin, the Stones, the Moody Blues, everybody have used Bob's synthesizers. August had been to an event that had Tibetan singing bowls that were like really gnarly looking, a couple 100 years old. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bowls at an event in Asheville where we live, while Bob was still alive. And he took a little card from, this is a guy who had made Tibetan bowls his entire life, and it went back generations and generations and generations, hundreds to thousands of years in his family line. And August just got this idea. He was like, I wonder if I could make a singing bowl electronically where you could actually alter the pitch. And what if maybe it would actually have multiple singing bowls that you could work with the pitch to work with something called beating or beat frequency. I'll explain what beating is. I'll return to this a few times today. You hear that wobbling? These are almost in unison, almost. But they're not exactly in unison, and it's because of the fact that they're not the exact same pitch that you get what's called beating. It's that oscillation you feel between the two. Interestingly, I will say, anybody, you don't have to be a physics master to answer this question, although most of my questions are trick questions, just not this one. What would be the easiest way to get those into tune? There's a real simple way to do it.
Equal lengths. And at the same time.
This is an interesting thing. There's a huge message here about spiritual awakening, evolution, etc. The easiest way to tune these together is to find the one that's the more dense. You get a piece of sandpaper and just start removing matter from it. Start shaving it. And the more it lets go of, the more in tune it will be with this one. Funny because, let's just use it as a metaphor, kind of like the human self. Let's say this is the human and that's the eternal. This is the small s self, that's the big S self. We spend so much time trying to dump so much stuff into this one. Fill it up to convince it that it's that. It's funny because Christianity has an ancient symbology that it borrowed from other ancient symbologies, and it was something that looked kind of like that. It sort of leaned sideways. It was called the crux. And the crux is up and down in the most ancient philosophies that we know of, Akkadian, Phoenician, Sumerian. The up and down was the eternal. It was the unborn and undying. That which is non-dual, that which is whole and complete, undivided. The other part, which was the horizontal, was the human. Human. Hue. Anybody know what hue means?
Color.
Color is an example of hue. Hue means quality. Hue means quality. It could be the quality of a sound, the quality of a color. And funny, the mon sound comes from manus, which is a Latin root, which means hand. And what the word human actually means, humanus, is the vibrational quality of one with a hand. Human, interesting. Funny how we spend so much time grabbing in rather than sharing outward, but a little bit of a side thing. We spend so much time on that sort of human scale trying to make it like this one. And we struggle we excruciate, we suffer. The word excruciate means to suffer at the cross point, which is the cross point between the eternal higher self and the human self. Okay? Now, we suffer at the crux. Even if you look as an example at the Jesus story, I say this whenever I'm here in December, and I'll be back this December, with a whole full-blown audio-visual experience. This plus all kinds of really amazing experiential stuff. That's a cool giggle. I talk about how, as an example, we, in the words of Joseph Campbell, we continually mistake mythological symbols or archetypes as being references to historical facts. We study like the life of Jesus, not knowing that 87 to 92% of the actual lifetime of Jesus that's in the Bible is not Jesus. It's taken directly from Horus, from ancient Egypt. But I've got a little, actually, we'll do a little bit of toning with Ra. We did that new Ra sound. I'll talk about it in a moment. But Ra is to Horus in the Egyptian philosophies what Christos is to Jesus in the Christian philosophies. Same thing. And we'll get into that subject matter, but a lot of people don't realize that, we look at the storyline, we look at the human part and we obsess with it. Really, I'll talk about that more as we go forward. What we're doing is we're obsessing about a movie on a screen. We're obsessing about something that's projecting that doesn't really exist, okay? Especially doesn't exist separate from what's observing it. I'll keep coming back to that theme. But a lot of people don't realize that on December 21st every year in the Western Hemisphere, that the only begotten Son drops down right into the center of what was called the Southern Crux, which is a constellation of stars, kind of sits sideways. It sits dead on that cross for 3 days. Late on December 24th, the three kings of Orion's belt point directly at Sirius, the dog star, the star in the east, which points directly at the newborn sun, only begotten Son, which moves 1 degree north on the morning of December 25th. Happens every year. So what I'm saying is, we're looking at these coded symbols, not realizing that there's something in back of it, there's something behind it that's much more profound. One of those things that people ask me a lot in what I do, they're like, they want to know about only begotten. What does that mean? They want to know about John 3:16. One of the things they ask a lot, though, is, what about the I ams? Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life, right? Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life, right? Jesus said, I am the gate, I am the bread of life. I'm like, well, Number one, I wasn't there. Number two, it's a little more than that. And I've said this here before, but I'm going to come at this in a sort of a different focal point this time. If Yeshua were speaking of himself, this is what I would see on the page in Aramaic. It's 3 letters, Aleph, Nun, Aleph, but the way it sounds is like this, Ana, or Ina or Ina, depending on how the dialect pronounces it. So, Ana, Ana. If you know anybody named Ana, their name is an ancient Semitic sound going all the way back to ancient Sumeria that means I. Okay? So if Jesus said, as an example, Ana Nuhra de Alma, that would be I, Jesus, am the light, Nuhra, which is the sound we just made, Nura. I didn't make you go Nura. We didn't do the H part in the middle, the letter He. But if he was saying, I, Jesus, am the light of the world, he would say, Ana Nuhra de Alma. But that's not what's written on the page in Aramaic. It doesn't say Ana. It actually has this word twice. Looks like that. Ana, Ana. Intriguingly, when we pronounce that in Aramaic, even though I see 2 separate words, we pronounce it as a single word. It sounds like this, Anana, Anana. Anybody ever study philosophy, ancient mythology? Ever heard the word Anana before? Inanna was the ancient Sumerian goddess of love, fertility, and warfare. Inanna had a twin sister. Inanna herself was more conscious and whole. Her twin sister tended to grab in a bit too much into darkness, grab in a little too much to things that were addictive, etc. They went down into the underworld together. Anybody know what the underworld is?
Hades.
What's Hades?
Hell.
This is it. This is the underworld. You're in it. What that means, and I'll give you a quote. This is a wide quote. It's a wide quote. It might go over your head. I don't mean that in any kind of negative way, but from Arthur Young, who was an astrophysicist. He actually was one of the inventors of the Bell helicopter. He said this in a book called The Reflexive Universe. That's where I got this gizmo from. I first saw Arthur Young had one. But he said that there is, in fact, a fall of man for the same process by which light first precipitates or condenses into matter, losing a degree of freedom, everywhereness, in exchange for permanence, now here-ness. So that oneness basically comes down, and in one of the I am statements, Yeshua said, I am the good shepherd. That word shepherd is reah in Aramaic. It means this. It means something that expands and gathers. Expands and gathers. And it doesn't say, I give of my breath for my flock. What it actually says is essentially that I concentrate or gather together the breath, the holy breath, to be the life of all manifestation. Basically, how many lights am I holding? Trick question. One light. And yet I'm holding one light. In truth, it looks like thousands of lights, but really there's just one light that hits a little prism here, and it gets refracted into all these different formations. So we look around, see all these people, philosophies, religions, etc. So Inanna had a sister, looked like 2 different people, went down into the underworld. I don't want to go too deep into that mythology per se, but that sound has been around for a really long time. About 11,000 years the sound's been around. Intriguingly, if one Ana means I, if you were doing absolute literal translation, not shading it, this will give a lot of you a good lesson in how hard it is to translate sometimes, to get out of the way. Sort of let your mind not get locked in it. If one Ana means I, what would 2 of them mean, literally? It wouldn't be we. I. Literal I. In Aramaic, that means I am I, or the I within the I, or the I inside the I, or the I behind the I. It means, in other words, not that I that's reflecting on my hand, but what it's reflecting. The word for the light of the sun in many ancient languages was Ra. Moonlight was called Nu-Ra, which is what we just toned. Nu-Ra. There's Ra and Nu-Ra. There's always something new, right? What's unique about moonlight versus sunlight? It's a reflection of sunlight. So that means moonlight is sunlight. Nice. So would it be of any interest to you if I told you that the word for human light, human awareness, like when Yeshua said, Ninhar Kudun, Ninhar Norkun, Norkun, Kedem B'nei Nasha, Norkun. Nor is that word light. Kun means yours, one person. Said it to one person. Ninhar Norkun, I could say Norhun for all of you. Kedem B'nei Nasha, let your light shine before humanity. That word that means moonlight also means human light or human awareness. So if moonlight is sunlight, then human light is God light. The light of God was called Ra, the undivided, unbroken. It knows only itself, Ra. In the Egyptian philosophies, represented by this capstone. It's on our money, if you haven't noticed. In Christianity, it had a different name, Christos. Christos was that eternal light. Okay? Now, we're going to keep moving in that direction, and then I'm going to start introducing you to my friend here a little bit more. There's a great quote from St. Francis of Assisi. He said, I say it every time I'm here, and I'll probably say it every time I'm here into the future. He said, what you are looking for is what is looking. What you are looking for is what is looking. So just keep that in mind for a few moments. What happens if you go out into the universe, you go out into the solar system, and you start moving closer to the sun? What's going to happen to you? You're going to burn up. Now, let me ask you a little bit of a question, another one. What happens when you move closer to the light of God in your life? When it emerges, when it becomes stronger and you get closer to that light, what happens to you? A lot of people don't want to answer this because they want to have a nice New Age answer. Who said it? You burn up. You burn. What were you told to stay away from? Fire. You were told to stay away from hell. Did anybody here know that hell didn't exist in the time of Jesus the way that we think of it today? It's only about 900 years old. It was written in Italian by Dante, who was a jilted lover who wanted somebody he couldn't have. So he makes this divine passion play about people burning in these bizarro, waiting in purgatory and all these great things. The Catholic Church just kind of quietly went, well, that's kind of neat. Let's put that on here. Dovetail them together a little bit. When Yeshua made statements like in the Gospel of Thomas. Anybody know what Thomas means? Twin. Interesting, because what people usually think of that is that twin means twin brother. The word's didymus in Greek. It's tumas in Aramaic. This is what twin means. Now, what do you mean by that deal? Okay, I mean this. You've got that light and its reflection. What do you mean by that deal? So many different ways I can explain this, but as an example, twin. That you've got a small self, and it's not small. You've got the human and you've got the eternal. You've got that which is bound within time and space to some extent, and that which is not. Now, the question is, what happens when those two are out of phase with each other? What does that mean, out of phase?
Dissonance.
Dissonance. Who said it? Perfect. What's dissonance? This is dissonance. What's that called? It's called beating. It you a question. How intense is the beating in your life? I will say that your suffering is always in 100% direct proportion to your resistance. Your resistance to what? Your resistance to the frequency patterns, the photographs in your consciousness that begin to speak when your temple hits the pinnacle. Like one of the things I often do in a lot of my, I should have got a balloon. I'll blow into a balloon, and I'm sadistic, you know that, but is that the word? Sure. And I'll blow into a balloon, and I'll lean into the front row and watch most everybody go like that, kind of lean back, and there'll always be one nutcase who like is going leaning into me. The pinnacle of the temple, what's the temple? This, okay? We're not talking about a brick tower and Jesus climbs to the top of a brick tower. Continually mistake mythological symbols as being references to historical facts. What that means is that the energy body opens up to such an extent that it can't open anymore until resistance is allowed to be released in the system. It's called entropy in physics. It's the evolutionary moment of truth. You have a car running at 20 miles an hour in the 90s. It's your energy body, and you're like doing your meditation, and you've got your affirmations, and you're asking for greater light and higher awareness and faster vibration, and let's get to the great awakening of humanity. And then all of a sudden the energy body of humanity goes, and you go, oh, Nelly, how's it felt the last couple of years? It's all smooth sailing, right? Is it really smooth sailing? What happens is you run in the car at 20 miles an hour. You know, it's kind of important to make sure you're not bumping into people and cars and stuff. But if you got old oil in the engine, old ideas, old philosophies, old beliefs, it's not that important. But when that car starts hitting 40 and 60 and 80 and 100 and 120, obviously you're a lot more open, you're paying more attention, but it's really important what kind of resistance may or may not be in the system. Because when you're going 120 miles an hour, if you've got old creaky oil and it's really thin, your system's gonna break down. Let's honor a lot of the souls that have been checking out lately. There's not a good and bad in that. I can't count how many people I know that we've seen transition just to cancer alone. We have a friend that we're staying with right now in central Jersey who's going through that, possibly. We don't know. Still finding out details, but what I'm saying is when the temple opens up, it's kind of like having a piano that's really quiet and it's not making any sound. You can play really low, and if it's a little out of tune, it's okay. Or you've got a beautiful orchestra, and if the string section are a few cents off from each other, it doesn't really matter that much if the amplitude's low, if the volume's low. But when it gets really loud, at low volumes, it's fine. But when you've got dissonance, and everything starts getting louder and louder, and it expands and expands, it opens, the amplitude increases, and all of a sudden you get a little bit of a wobble. Feels kind of out of whack. It becomes really important to understand why the wobble's happening, and to be able to do what? To bring those two back into phase. To let go of the graven image. Thou shalt not have any graven images. You know what that means? Thou shalt not have any cooties on your lens. It means beliefs that are disempowering, beliefs that are out of phase, out of harmony, out of tune with the cosmic vibration. Your teeth are an antenna for the cosmic vibration. Your skeleton is an antenna for the cosmic vibration. In the end, I am the cosmic vibration. There was a beautiful reading that Jolene had about the ocean and the water. We're the wave. We're not the ocean per se, yet whatever the ocean is, I am. If I say I am God, I'm creating something, I'm encapsulating something. It's like I'm standing next to a mountain, and I'm looking at this beautiful mountain, and then I take a rock and pull it from the mountain, and I look at it and I go, wow, this is a rock, that's a mountain. But it's still the mountain, isn't it? We forget the fact that all of those lights that are being reflected are still that one eternal light. And we will suffer in direct proportion to how much we are in phase or out of phase with that eternal truth. It doesn't matter what I call it, because everything I call it is dualistic. We've got that in the beginning was what? The Word. If there's anything that didn't mean in Aramaic, Berashit, Etawi, Hua, Milta. If there's anything it did not mean, you know what it didn't mean? Word. And just because you capitalize T and W, the Word, and then of course the Word comes looking exactly like me, California surfer Jesus, wearing his sandals, hanging out with the prostitutes and the guy that gets his head cut off, and all that stuff, which just happened to happen in Egyptian philosophy too. Horus was baptized by Anup, and then Anup was beheaded, just like Horus was betrayed by Typhon, and then Typhon hung himself. That sure sounds like the Jesus story too, but shh. What I'm saying is, we've spent so much time focusing on words. We've spent so much time focusing on thoughts. Your thoughts are creative, right? Are you sure? Or maybe our thoughts effects of something else, but because you can see them on some level, you think they're creative. Maybe behind thought is something called feeling. And I don't mean emotion. That's different. Feeling is the sensation of pure frequency, of vibration. What does frequency mean? In the beginning was frequency. What's that? Sound. What does it really mean? Vibration. These are all examples of it. Anybody get excited about mathematics? It would probably be Jim. If there's anybody I know that gets into all this crazy stuff and reads thousands of books. Anybody? It's funny. You know what frequency means? It means two or more. It means there's no longer just an unbroken whole, but rather there's multiple now. The one, come on Dale, you can do it. I can't take it off. The one becomes the many. But the many is the one, and the one is the many. In the beginning was emergence. In the beginning was frequency, vibration, emanation, a temporal fluctuation of the undivided holiness. And it's not about a word, because the word is what happens when we, or the thought. That's the crystallization. That's the concentration of what we feel. Okay? You're feeling all the time, whether you can form a thought about it or not. So, down to here in our last couple minutes here. How would you explain that to your friends today? You ever read a book that explained chocolate? How many pages would you need in a book to explain chocolate, to be able to understand what chocolate tastes like? Do you think a book could be ever be that long? I've read books about chocolate, lots of books, and they don't tell me a damn thing about how it tastes. It's kind of earthy, sort of, You ever had a Kit Kat? All right, wait, never mind. It's like Snickers, no. Dove, no. Hershey's, no. What words do you use? We think, as Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. Nothing can be further from the truth. We think, because we can monitor thoughts and we can see them, we think that that's what's creating. But behind your thoughts is a pure sensation, an awareness of something very, let's move up to the heart chakra. Just close your eyes for a moment. How much slower that beat is getting? We're coming into phase. Just breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. lot more with this afternoon. Last night we spent some time with our friend laying on a John of God crystal bed with the Vogel crystals, and this at the same time. And he's got, an issue around this area of his body. Had all kinds of, different things happening on the different chakras. When it got to his heart chakra, all of a sudden his energy change was instantaneous as soon as it got to that frequency pattern vibration. Funny, because in the Christian philosophies, the chakras are actually there, but they screwed it up really bad because they were too ignorant, I'll just say it in a nice way, is that nice? Of what they were looking at. They call them what? They call them demons. In Mark chapter 16 in the Bible, which is not in all Bibles, they talk about Jesus casting out 7 demons. What it says in Aramaic is Shabea Shiadain Apek. Shabea means 7. Shiadain is the word translated as demon. What that means is, this is what demon means.